Well, good morning again. And for those of you that are just watching online, thanks for watching. And then all of you listening to our podcast, I'm glad you're listening. We have one of my favorite human beings is in the house today, all right? And I don't even know where to begin or what to say. If you've been around Vinings Lake for any amount of time, she's going to look very familiar to you. A lot of you are new around here, and you're like, who is this individual? And you're going to find out. But I am so grateful she made the trip to be with us. There's a lot I could say about Felicia. One thing I will tell you is she's not only one of my favorite humans, she's one of the few humans that I find to be the safest on the planet. And she knows things about me that only God knows, all right? Because she's edited so much of my stuff, and I mean this, just a heart of gratitude and gratefulness for this individual. And I'm so thankful that she's here. Would you do me a favor, and would you just welcome back home Felicia Murrell? Well, this feels good, and I'm so glad you're back. Welcome home.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be home. It feels so good to be here with all of you today. Thank you for having me.
I am curious, how many of you in this room were here when Felicia and Doug were here? Okay. Let's do this. How many of you, this is your first encounter with Felicia? All right. You see,
I see.
Yeah. Apparently the sermons ran other people off, and now there are new people. Felicia knows. Felicia, you've been in the church world for a long time, haven't you?
Long time.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Doug and Felicia, they jumped in here, and Doug served on our board, and then Felicia, we were just like tag teaming some teaching. And then they got the call, just the nudge that it was time to go explore some other things. And so you went out to New Mexico for a while. Just recap for our people that are like, what are you doing now? That's the question. So you're no longer in New Mexico.
We're no longer in New Mexico.
Okay, you are in, I'm told this is a place, Minnesota.
We're in Minnesota.
Okay, I genuinely am not even sure if I could find that on the map, all right?
Home
Minnesota.
of thousands and thousands of beautiful lakes, and
yes,
the Mississippi River actually runs through the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
We have a little touch of the South. Mighty Mississippi runs through Minnesota.
I love that. So what are y'all doing in Minnesota?
So Doug is working for Mayo Clinic, actually.
Mayo Clinic, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he is doing community engagement with Mayo Clinic.
Okay.
And really trying to help right some of the disparities with clinical trials and medical research for Black and brown bodies. So that's
love it.
Why he went to work there. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too.
And then your family's got, last time you were actually here, we were doing a parenting series. Yeah. And Felicia, you should probably go back, but you brought your whole family up.
Yeah, well, the oldest daughter was missing from the crew, but yes. Yeah, the three that lived here were here with us. So. And
then you just like opened the mic. Listen, people, could you imagine bringing your entire family and just having them on a platform, and then you just open the floor and like just pass the mic around? If you haven't watched that, I think it's still floating around, but that was fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you for having us.
And then in the meantime, throughout all this process, the last time you were here, you apparently started writing. Yes. Because you have gifted the world this book, which is why you're here today. I was like, we've got to bring her in. But she wrote this book. It's called And, The Restorative Power of Love in an Either-Or World. First of all, I don't know who did your design, because that's fantastic.
Whitaker House.
Did they really?
Yeah, they came up with that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And shout out, by the way, we're going to talk a little bit of publishing just because I'm kind of really nerding out in that world a little bit, but I would just like to say shout out to Whitaker House. I don't even know who Whitaker House is, but shout out to them for taking a risk. And I love that they're amplifying your voice.
Yeah.
And I love that any publisher would lean in and be
shocked that they yes. But I'm very happy they did.
I love that. Yeah. It's fantastic. Well, it's a great book. All right. I want to get into it because there's so much to say about it. A couple of things. First of all, I don't want to tell you all of you this. This book, for me, is, I think, Felicia, it has been released into the world at a critical moment because you have always been, for me, a bit of an anchor. I always say people like a deep well of wisdom. When I seem to be confused, or there's cobwebs and I'm trying to work through some things, or I run into something that I'm just like, God, there's something going on in me and I can't articulate it. Felicia's usually the one that I run to, and I'll send you an email. And people, we don't talk much on the phone, but we talk through email. All right, that's because she's so good with writing. I mean this. I'm like, just write to me. You know what I mean? Like we could talk on the, don't talk, just write to me. And every time she sends an email, Katie can testify to this. My wife can testify to this. Every time she sends an email, I will go downstairs and read it to Katie. Like, Katie, listen to Felicia write these words. And I say that to you because I've said this to you before, but this book, it feels like hundreds and hundreds of personal emails. And so I do want to just kind of start and ask you, tell me a little bit about the process of writing this book, because it's filled with poetry. There's some prose in here. There's a lot in this book. Was this, like, when you writing it, were you just bearing your soul, or did you know you were writing a book while you were writing it?
Yeah, I never know. I think writing for me, I write to empty my insides. And so I tend to get really full up on the world. I tend to get full up on things that are going on in pop culture, the environment around me, people around me. And how I process that is in stillness. I kind of hold it all in. And then you were sharing in your prayer series about going outside and grounding with the earth. Mm-hmm. So I have a practice too, and that I love green space, and I go and I yawn into the earth, and I just let out everything that's inside, literally hands and feet down. So you stand feet to the earth. I put my whole hands and feet down. Mm-hmm. So that's one way things come out for me, and the other is through writing. And so most of this is that process of release.
So you like just get on the ground?
Oh, seriously. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wonder what my name.
Almost like a prayer posture. Oh, people would think you were crazy. Join the crazy.
Yeah. I already get nervous because for those of you that don't know, we talked about like prayer grounding as like a practice. And so I told them I go outside, and I don't always do this, but sometimes I will take my shoes off and I'll just look up in the sun, because the sun just warms my body. And I am like, it feels like solar power, right? Like I'm just like, charge me up. Like I need energy. And I do often, I worry about, like, because my neighbors, they'll walk by like, how you doing? And I'm just standing there, and they're like, what is he looking at? And sometimes I'm like, just looking at the landscape. You know what I mean? Like, so if I went full on straight down into the ground, that would do it.
But freedom is being free from the opinions of others.
Well.
And so, like, I mean, for real, right? And so, no, but honestly, I mean, when we understand that we're in partnership with the earth, and the earth is in partnership with us, and we're all in a web and it's all connected together, honestly, I think that's part of, the biblical narrative says the earth is groaning for the sons to be revealed. And part of that is to understand, I think that revelation is to know that we're connected. So they can hold that. They've been holding the weight of us for a really long time, right? And so I think there's something in understanding that all matter matters, including that. And it too is an anchor and a support to hold that. And so I just offer it back to Mother Earth.
Yeah.
I
love that. Well, we'll work on the not caring about what person said. So, was it Brene Brown?
Make sure to send me an email when you do.
That's right, I will. Brene Brown talks about getting clear on whose opinion matters to you. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's
beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get in to some of the actual writing here. Okay. I think when you talk about love, maybe this is a good place to start. When you talk about love, are there distinctions to be made when you use that word love? And here's what I mean. Because I noticed, like you have said a couple of times in this book, you make some references that I was like, I'm curious. And by the way, we haven't talked about any of these questions, so she has no idea what's coming at her, which I love. But I started reading, and I was like, this is interesting. And it comes, too, from a critique of my own understanding. I've had those around me, critique it and just say, hey, I appreciate your understanding of love. So without being too vague, I mean, just recently I wrote a tweet that said something like this. My own spiritual evolution has shifted from, I started out very conservative, very fundamentalist, far right. And then when I tasted some liberation, I ran as hard and as fast as I could to the far left, right? And this isn't unfamiliar with our people, but I hit a wall that looked very familiar to the wall that I left to the right.
Absolutely.
It was like different beliefs, but same fundamentalism, same posture. And then I was so let down by the far left because I thought that was the way, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I met some folks that were like, no, you got to be in the center because that's the place of wisdom. Only to find that didn't work either because that was like filled with a whole bunch of people that weren't willing to stand up for anything. You know what I'm saying? And then I went internal. So I went down. You know what I'm talking about? Where people are like, no, the problem is you can't go right, left, or center. You got to go inward because you're the problem. You know what I'm talking about? I'm like, I am the problem, right? And Jesus has this whole great line. He's like, basically get the log out of your own eye. And so I did all this internal work, which is great. And then there was at some point where I realized I can keep doing this work and I become very narcissistic because I'm like, God, it's all about me. And then I met some folks that were like, no, I'll tell you what the problem is. You need higher stages of consciousness. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And they introduced me to Eckhart Tolle. And I was like, yes, Eckhart I don't know if you ever heard Eckhart speak. He just talks like this and he doesn't move and he sits there. But he's a genius. I was like, all right. So then I started going up. So it's kind of like this right, left, down, up, center. And at some point, I started observing that there was a thread through all of those areas, and it was love. Like when I look back, I realized, oh my God, even as hard as the far right was, I somehow tasted some love in that. And then when I went over I somehow tasted love there. I tasted love here. And I start to kind of trace that thread, and I realize, oh my God, it's love. And so,
you notice the way your hand just went when you traced the thread? Do it
this way.
Oh, a circle.
Yeah.
Keep doing that.
Come on.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. The circle of life, it all includes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And all of it belongs.
All of it belongs.
This is why sometimes you meet people that are like, I wish I was further along. It's that you are exactly where you need to be.
Yes.
And none of it's wasted.
Right.
None of it's wasted.
None of it.
So if you're here and you're like, oh, my fundamentalist upbringing, people, you are who you are because of that upbringing. And what good is it for us to look back in any shame?
Right.
Because it all makes us who we are. And that was the box that I was raised in. But even in the midst of that, I was able to taste love.
Right.
And experience it on some level. And so I bring that up because, the common thread for me was love. And it's single-handedly in my life right now at 42. It's the most powerful force that I know. I wrote you an email one time a long time ago, and I said something about, pain is the most transformative thing I've ever experienced. And you said something like, it can be the second one, but the first one is love. And I don't know that I knew that at the time, but I've had experiences in the last couple years of my life where I realize suffering and pain, as transformative as it can be, holds no weight to love. And it has the potential to melt the ego, to shatter the hardest addictions. And I say that to say there's been some critique there from folks that I don't think fully understand what you're talking about and what I'm talking about when we talk about love. And so you even say on this one page, page 32, you said, while every destructive expression of anger comes from an invitation from the divine to experience love in that area. And then, but you make a preference here. You say the present kumbaya illusion of peace and all is well is unsustainable, which I wrote a little note and I just said, is there a distinction? Felicia, when you write about love, would you distinguish between the kumbaya type love we experience sometimes that can hurt us, sometimes that we have a relationship with, sometimes that might be portrayed in like pop culture, you know what I mean? Versus the love that you're talking about. Is there a...
Yeah, so for me, love doesn't hurt. So first of all, if you're saying love and hurt together in the same sentence, then that's not love. And so when I often write about love, I'm talking about the sacred presence of divine love. And I say that because, as you said, I've been in the church a long, long time. I actually don't remember a time in my life where I was not in the church. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I also was bitter, angry, raging, frustrated, hitting my kids, doing all the things inside the church as a church leader, as a pastor's wife, as a pastor. No, actually, by the time I pastored, I had an encounter with love. So sinner's prayer didn't change me at all. I was conditioned to believe certain things, but I did not have, I knew things in my head, but I didn't have an experiential, transformative relationship. What changed me was love. I encountered love loving me, and love loving me changed me. And in the sitting and the being, that process, love changed me from the inside out, right? It changed how I was with myself, and it unhandcuffed me from the lies I believed about myself. It unhandcuffed me from the judgments, from the shame, from the hate that I felt, and the self-recrimination, all of that, because I was looking at myself and measuring myself against society, against the church, against what I was supposed to do, and all the shoulds, right? And I was shoulding all over myself. I was a mess of dung and shoulds, right? And, when you come face to face with love and you look, love has no illusions about who you are and the truth of your being. And so sitting face to face with love, seeing the truth of my being, and in that place, learning how to be who I already was, right? At the core of who we are imago Dei, which is created in the image. And 1 John 4:8 says that God is love. So if we are created in the image and likeness of God, at our core, the center of our being is love. And I remember one thing that I hold to so tightly from Spirit, this whole idea about perversion and profanity, profane things, because I grew up in a faith tradition where if it wasn't what they said, it was all demonic. So everything was demonic. Catholicism was demonic. This was demonic. That was demonic. Somebody had a spirit, this spirit. It's all these things are so bad. So you're parsing things into good and bad. And one of the things I really gleaned from Spirit is, in order to profane something about that had to be sacred to begin with. So it's like what you're saying about the ideas about fundamentalism and these places that we consider in our life bad. But when we pause, when we listen to our heart, when we ask Spirit to show us, somewhere there's some beauty, truth, and goodness. And we can say, that's the truth of that, right? All the rest of that might be a ball of wax, right? But there is love. And so when I speak of that love, I write with a capital L, because I mean higher power, higher presence, whatever name for God you want to use. But for me, what changed me is love. And so I refer to the divine as love. And everyone's on a journey. So I take no offense at people who rankle with it or who say, but I've experienced hurt. I understand that. I grew up in a home where love hurts. I'm doing this for your good is often what I was told. But what I've come to know is that's not love. That is what you and the capacity that you are functioning in know to do. That's not love. And so when I talk about love, I'm talking about a wholeness. I'm talking about a relationship, right? I'm talking about that perichoretic dance that happens between spirits, the Holy Three, that we are invited to participate in, that exists. And so anything else that does not match the way of love is not love. You can call it whatever you want. But I think when you talk about communing and communal relationships, you'll find love, right? And so I don't have to get into the particulars of that. Yeah. I know that I was a mess until love changed me. And that didn't happen from reading. I read the Bible through and through every year, back and forth. I can still quote it very, very well, right? Yeah. But I was mean as a snake reading the Bible. So the Bible, it was a book, like this. It was a book. Yeah. And it was not life-giving until love made it life-giving for me. Then it changed.
Was that a moment experience for you, or was this over time?
Yeah, it's both and. And so there was
nice, but yeah. I hope you picked up on that. Yes.
Well, no, really though, there was a marked experience that I know. But what that did was it became an invitation because I was so afraid that that I was a disappointment, that I was an F up, right? I mean, like I felt like I was branded. I could wear a T-shirt that's who I was, and there was a moment in experiencing love when love was able to break through the armored up person that I walked around as, to let me know that there was something good in me. And just the taste of that goodness became an invitation, and it still remains an invitation to discover that goodness. And so I begin my days waking up, greeting the wonder of the day, and inviting love to flow to me and love to flow through me. And yes, it was a moment, but and this also has been since that day an ongoing, this is how I live and move and have my being.
I want to read, this is from 272, and then I want to ask you a question that I'm sure, because you've been this book released when? February the 18th?
February 13th.
13th.
Valentine's.
Oh, nice. So the book release, so you've kind of been in some interviews, you've been traveling a little bit, and so I'm sure over time you start kind of hearing similar questions. I'm sure maybe you've had this question, but it's one that anytime you do a work like this, there's going to be those that critique it. And I think this is one that's already arisen. It's arisen in my own work, and you have influenced so much of my own work that I'm sure you have had this before. But I want to read this, and then I'll ask the question. You say, the only side God takes is the side of love. I ain't going to read anymore. I'm just going to stop there, okay? The only side God takes is the side of love. Knowing who's watching, knowing who's in the room, I hang out with lots of friends that would fundamentally disagree with that statement. And they would say, actually, maybe, I don't know that they fully understand it, but I think they would say, and as I've seen their shirts, God always takes a side, and justice always demands a side. This might be a bit of a shock to some people. Do you think God takes sides? Do you think it's important for our moment right now, where there's so much abuse, so much racism, so much Islamophobia, so much homophobia, coming into an election year? This is why this is so critical. It's no coincidence this book released exactly when it did. We need guidance, people. Otherwise, we're going to kill each other. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like we need some like village folks that can give us some wisdom, because you feel it. You feel it. It's in the air. I'm going to be real honest with you, as if I'm not all the time. But we kind of have a running joke at our house. We just this was help from another mentor of mine, but we just kind of say it like in a ridiculous way. But it's like, can you believe this? Think about this. If someone had told me this 2 decades ago, if 2 decades ago someone come to me and said, Cody, check this out. In the future, in 2024, it will be Biden and Trump running for an election. If someone told me that 20 years ago, I would have laughed and said, that's the least progressive thing I've ever heard in my entire life, right? But you feel it in the air. And I think there's also a little bit of fear in there, going, what's going to happen? Also, there's a lot of fatigue, going, we just did this, and we're here again. And you're in the state of Georgia, which is a critical state for the future of the country. And I'm just wondering, is there a time for us to choose sides here? And do you believe justice takes side? Do you think God is on the side of the oppressed? There's a few questions.
You're trying to just get me and here's what I believe with my whole heart. I will tell you this from my journey. I remember really wanting to know, I needed God to tell me what was right about the issue of homosexuality, right? I can remember this so clearly. And so I'm begging God, like, whatever you tell me is true. I just needed to be certain. Hear my heart. I needed to be certain. Tell me what, I read this in the Bible and I don't know what to believe. Tell me what to believe and I'll believe it. And so I'm taking a walk one day and I hear so clearly Spirit say, Felicia, people matter. Jesus is more for something than he is against it. People matter. More than your credo. I didn't even know what that word meant when this dropped inside of me. So I had to go look it up, and it means your belief system. More than your credo, more than your certainty, more than any issue, people matter. People matter. And so when you ask me whose side love is on, love will always be on the side of people. The wretched man that I am, I have been and probably will be again in my life, both a victim and a perpetrator, right? And so part of me, because I need to be certain that I'm in right, and a lot of this comes because our Christianity has been taught to us from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so we think in terms of binaries. We think in right, wrong, good, bad, and so we, Jesus loves the little children. And so we want to be loved by Jesus. So we want to make all the right choices and do all the right things to ensure for certain that we are loved, that we end up in the right place and make the right things. And so if you tell me this person is evil, then I will hate evil. If you tell me this person is the perpetrator, then I will cast my judgment against the perpetrator. But wait, is there any kernel of anything redeemable in a perpetrator? Is the imago Dei not the imago Dei in both the victim and the perpetrator? So does God turn his back on the perpetrator because he killed? We are more than the worst things we've ever done. And are we asking to be judged by our worst action? And do our actions become our identity? We also have to, when we start there at God taking sides, this is a deeper question than just choose the right or wrong side, right? And so, because if you're saying someone's behavior is their identity, then we're all damned to a hell that does not exist, right?
A damn to a hell that does not exist. This is why I love you. Oh, yes, right? Yes, proceed.
And so, what do I believe about justice? Justice is right alignment. And I believe that love extends an invitation to all of us into wholeness and to come into the way of love, right? Whole justice is right living, right thinking, right acting. But what is right? Who determines what's right for you and what's wrong for you? Something that's yes for me may be no for you. I have to live in relationship with the Spirit for myself and listen to that in a communal way. And so I always say, and this is what I know to be true, most people are afraid of freedom because they like formulas and boundaries and rules. And so they tell me what to do and I'll do it. I just need to be certain that I'm doing the right thing. But love invites us into a relationship. And, love is the structure in which freedom is governed. And what I mean by that is when I live and move and have my being in love, I can live free. I can hear the voice of love for myself. And I includes, I is not selfish. I is not just about me, right? When I understand, when love heals me, the part of me that comes into wholeness and comes to the truth of my being always extends outward and sees beyond myself. And so I'm never going to take any part of me and splash it onto someone else willfully, right? And so if I'm walking in a wholeness that's that, I will walk in justice towards my fellow man. But if I'm trying to add someone outside of me, and this is where we get into, you have to pick a side, you have to choose, because we have been conditioned from the church, from society, that power is outside of us. And so I need someone outside to validate my identity, to validate my orientation, to validate my worth, to validate my existence. I have handed my power outside of myself, right? And so I need you to say this way so that I feel safe or I feel a certain way. I need someone outside of there. But when I come into a relationship with love, love fills all of those holes, all of those needs, all of those things. And inside of that grounded place, then I can actually give, right? I'm not needing that from the outside. That's why, I won't ever say people's opinions don't matter, but it's not going to sway me too much because I'm listening for and moving in tandem with the voice of love. Mm-hmm. And so inside of that, what I know is that those are love's sons and daughters and non-binary humans as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like, love loves them too, even in all their mess. And so I can't write them off. I can't write them off. So I'm going to not answer your question by answering your question.
I think you answered it. I think as you were talking, as I do with your emails, but I was just sitting there listening to what love is saying to me in the midst of it. And I hope that you understand this. There is a level of depth to what you just said that I genuinely believe this is why Jesus kept using that statement, if you have ears to hear. If you have ears to hear. So there's only a language and vocabulary limits us. And sometimes these things, this is why I think you wrote poems in here. I come from a world where it's 3 steps. I come from a world where it's more science-based, more mind-focused. I graduated from Emory University. Still paying those loans.
Tell me about
it. And it's just interesting because when the hardest job of a human, and even the first question that we talked about, is trying to describe something so ineffable. And this is a job. They gave me a degree, Master of Divinity. So my job is to stand up and somehow try to articulate and communicate to you divine. And this is why I think this is so good. It's almost like you could have written this in a nonfiction way, like God is love, which writers have done, and it's great. But in some ways, you just bare your heart on the page and you write in poetry, because when you talk about love, you can't, a scientist can't talk about it. You got to have the poet. Does that make sense? Because you're trying to give language to something that's so difficult to give language to. And so when I heard you talking, there are several things that I'm like, yes, God, how do we say that even better? First of all, your distinction between our actions and our essence. I don't think we've arrived as a human species to full awareness of that. Because the complexity of humanity, it's just, we're conditioned, and it's easier for us to just say, well, that's good and evil. That's good, that's evil. And guess what? I get to decide. That's good, that's evil. And it's hard, okay? So I want to be the first to tell you, Katie and I have had many conversations sitting in our living room by our little selves, watching something on television. And I'm like, God, that guy is evil. Do you hear what I just said? That guy, and there's something within me, and I am a pastor, for God's sakes. There is something within me, and I just I will look and say, is there anything good in there? It is so challenging. So when you throw that out there, it's not no, guys, don't confuse people's actions with essence. If anyone's ever wronged you, you know that we need to leave right now. Because until we master that idea, I don't know that we're ever going to make it as a human species. That we are, but I love it when it's me. So when you say to me, you're not your worst mistake, I'm like, that's right. But that guy, he's his worst mistake. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so that's just profound in itself. And I want to be clear too, because I saw the grin on your face, and I know that you know and I know, but you're not that line. There's been a very famous line that has gone out into our country. There's very fine people on both sides. That's a miss with what you're trying to say. Because as I'm reading it, here's how I understand it. I understand it to say, at the very essence of every human species on this planet is divine love. And there are moments where actions don't line up with essence. That does not mean that we ignore the actions. There are consequences to the action. And we will resist any action that does not coincide with the essence of love.
It's not a blanket, blank check, to be all willy-nilly, come harm me or come harm the world. That's not the same. But I think it's important to understand, this person is walking outside themselves. We are never separated from love, right? Like God is always there. Love is always there. But we absolutely can be alienated from the awareness and the knowledge that love is with us, right? So light is shining, but if I turn my back to this light, I don't know that light is shining. If I put something up and I block the light, that light doesn't shine to me. So yes, I can be alienated from the presence of love, even though we are never, ever separated from love. Love is what, even a gunman gunning down people in a high school, the presence of love at the core, as hard as that sound, is in that person. And I guarantee you that if they had quieted the chaos and the hell and the torment that they were living in, love would have been begging, don't do it. Don't do it. Turn away. This is not the answer. Love would have been beseeching for the mercy of the lives of the piece of people that a gunman took. But that does not erase the fact that love at the core, Imago Dei, exists even in a gunman. Love is there. Love is always there. Love is there. Love is there covering the blood of the people that are gunned down. Love is there. Love doesn't say, I'm going to be with this one, but not this one. Because what if you're the not? How do we do that? How do we find justice in that? And what we're looking for is fairness. But like you just said, we want to be on the side of fair when it's for our gain. And even though we don't want hell to exist, we do want to punish. But love does not hurt. Love reconciles, love restores, love redeems. Love always calls us to ourselves. Love remembers who we were before the foundation of the world and is always calling us into who we already are. We don't have to go out and try to recreate an image. We are who we already are. And if we get quiet enough, love will whisper and remind us. And we just begin to come into alignment with the truth of our being. But that's true for every single person. And so as much as, certain leaders of the world grate every bit of my skin, and I cuss really, really loud in my own home, I promise you, right? I'm not an angel, y'all. Don't get that. Don't get me wrong with that. But I also know that even in that, love is inviting even those who misuse power, who abuse, who are corrupt, who do the craziest wrongful things. Love is inviting them to come home to themselves. Love is always extending that invitation for them to come home, come home, come home. Think about the prodigal son. He came to himself. But even in coming to himself, right, he was still making up a story. He's still like, yeah, I'm going to go tell my father this, that, the other. And he's working it out in his head of how to make it his way, even though he came to himself. And so we're still both and. We are, like you said, we are human beings that are messy. We're complex. None of us are drama-free. We all have some things that we're always going to be working out. And love is always inviting us into wholeness. That's the journey, right? And so that's part of the circle of life. That's part of the circle of life. But love is always shining the light of love, the truth of our being, so that when we see it, it's like, oh, that's who I am. Let me come on to that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. God, I hope y'all hear it. Are you hearing this? Because the sides, we've done the sides, and it didn't. We're not.
We're
better.
still here because we're doing the sides, right? I mean,
Yes.
Part of the reason why 2016 was not enough, 2020 was not enough, and here we are still at 2024 is because we're still demanding that you take a side. But what happens is, if I have to choose a side and I think I'm right, I'm going to dig my heels in. And so, and we've talked about this with the whole right-left thing. If I am fundamentalist at my core, but love doesn't transform that fundamentalist belief, all I do is take all of that protesting, the fundamental thing, over to another thing. I don't become the truth of who I am, right? And so I just transfer can't. All I'm doing is transfer can't. But I dig my heel in because when I am afraid, certainty makes me feel safe. And so I'm going to dig my heel in. I don't hear anything you say. I'm just right. And I know I'm right. And I'm not shifting positions. So we have two sides and a huge chasm in between. Right? And so how do we turn toward each other? How do we do that? I'm not asking you to give up the things that matter to you. Doug and I travel broadly, United States and abroad. And when we go through rural places in America, I understand why they can't get with a lot of the policy things for an urban, dense city. They're not supposed to. That's not their way of life. But if you only have lived in an urban, dense city, you don't understand why these rural people in your minds are so backwards, because you don't understand their way of life. So instead of trying to make the rural people urban or suburban and the urban people rural, how about we make room to allow. I trust that your lived experience is your lived experience. And there's a reason why you need certain things for that. And let me be the keeper of my lived experience and my story, and trust that I know what I need. And allow. There's room enough in America to allow for generosity. So why do we come at each other from scarcity and fear? Because when I am afraid, I want control. And right now, for the last 2 or 3 cycles, it has been whomever has control has power. And I'm going to do whatever I can to get that. But it ends up making the chasm wider and wider and wider. And we feel like we have to stake a sunlight. But the only way we do something different is a third way. And for me, that way is the way of love. Right? I'm never going to disown my friends and family members that believe different from me. Now, I might give them a really huge berth, right? We're not riding together like this, but I'm not going to completely disown them. But the circle is wide enough to include them too. I'm just going to probably position myself further around the circle to give them some time to journey a little bit. You know?
I could understand why a publisher wouldn't want to sell the book. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I just want you to know, and you know this about Vinings, like this isn't the sexiest message in the world. Do you know what I'm saying? Because our egos are like, give me the firecracker that comes here and says, this is the way, you know what I'm saying? Like, but here's what's interesting. This is not, this isn't a conversation about centrism. That's not what we're talking about. This isn't a conversation about neutrality. I think it was Cornel West. I want to make sure I'm right. I think it was Cornel West that says justice is what love looks like in public. So when we talk about love, to me, my experience, again, and I know, and I want to move on. God, there's thousands of other things to talk about, and this is the frustration, all right? I have a list of subjects, but we're digging into something here, and I'm just saying, I think love, my experience of love, and I think we're talking about the same thing, it shatters all those categories. And the only thing I can tell you is I experienced that love personally, and you know about this, you and Katie, I experienced that love personally when I had some deep pain in my life and I actually thought I was dying. And I cannot explain this to you other than just to say I've had people in my life who have also had very close, what they would describe, I think I'm about to die. And there's something that happens, and I'm just using the word ego because it was what was handed to me, however you define that, that you start to realize all of this, all of our forms are all great and they serve a great purpose and they're great. They will eventually disintegrate, come to an end, and yet there's still something inside of us that isn't this. And somehow in the midst of that, even my worst enemy that has hurt me deepest, there was some sense of compassion for them that was not natural. I'm going to say that. It probably is natural, but by and large isn't very natural for me. But it wasn't until I felt like love had just kind of melted all of that in me, I realized these categories don't even work. Like, they really don't. And I just want to say from it would be helpful for all of us to realize humanity is a very complex thing. And right and left categories have failed us. They've failed us because we're far more complex than those two categories. And I hope that this message can just
keep
go.
us at each other's throat instead of coming together. So
Yeah.
So when I think when you delve into systems, you understand, there's a little bit about why, but we don't know that we're playing unconsciously into that and creating more and more of the divide. And I have to just shout out Whitaker House. I will have to say, from my first meeting with my acquisition editor, they have championed this book and loved it and was like, oh, this reads like Maya Angelou. I'm like, you don't even know how much I love that woman. You're so filling my head right now. And but their market is a very conservative Christian market. And so it was very shocking for them to say yes to buying the book. But they have been very like, we want this to just be out in the world. People are going to be. There were a few things that I had to change. When I speak of the divine in pronouns, I use non-binary pronouns. I use they, them pronouns for the divine because, anyway, we won't get into that.
Surely the divine transcends gender. Yes.
I mean, imagine.
Yes.
So imagine that.
Not a white male? What? All right. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of people when they die, they're like, wait, who is this?
Imagine that. And they're like, that's taking people too far too soon. So what can we do? And so that's why you see the Holy Three language. Because
Holy Three. I saw that a lot. Yeah.
So the conversation I always had was, I want to be true to myself and who I am and where I am in my own journey. And I also want to honor where other people are on the journey. I'm not trying to intentionally shock or offend people just for offense sake, right? And so I could hold, what they were saying because they're in publishing. They know their market. They know their audience. And so I had to sit with, okay, what does that look like? I cannot use, patriarchal pronouns solely. So what can I do? So that was our concession, how we did. And I appreciated, that there's another passage in there that they thought might have been a little crass. And it's about when stink lingers on your fingers. And I write a piece in there about, I can't remember now, but people that have essentially wronged me or harmed me, and how when I'm in their presence, it's like that same thing of when stink lingers on your fingers and you can still smell it. So even though, you cleanse your hands and your hands are clean, but it still kind of lingers and you're kind of like, with the person. I was just being honest. Like, I mean, these people have done some funky things to me. I've forgiven, yes, but I haven't forgotten, And so they were like, that's a bit crass. Can we change it? And I was like, no. And I said, really think about it. So I was like, if you ever change the baby's diaper and happen to, land your hand in a mess and you wash your hands and you do like that. And my editor, her face just busted out into a smile because it's the truth. Like, anybody who's ever changed a diaper or whatever, And I'm like, okay, so that was the closest metaphor or word picture to how it felt in my person when I was around someone that had wronged me. You know, even though I've forgiven, I'm still like, I got your number. I got your number, you know? And so we had to make some concessions, and they were beautiful. I get the president of the company. We happened to be in Chicago at the same time. Let's have dinner. Now, you know I'm a foodie. And so I had dinner reservations at a Michelin star restaurant. And I was like, I can cancel? And she was like, no, we'll do that. And literally, like, let's go to dinner. And we spent 2.5 hours. What company of...
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right. And she sends the most beautiful text. And I was rereading your book, and this stuck out to me. She'll send a quote, or the other day she sent a Leslie Odom YouTube video. And so I absolutely I landed at the right place for the book to reach a larger market. And so I really kudos to them. Even with all of who they are, their history and all of that, they recognize that the spectrum of Christianity, and this is what they told me, we recognize that the spectrum of Christianity is not just evangelical, fundamental, conservative. And we want to represent the whole broad swath of all of Christianity. And so this book is a great place. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, so you're not going to ask me to change everything to be a certain way to fit in. And so I appreciate it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we got to go. By the way, she's going to be at Books and Bonfire, so all of you that have signed up will take it a little further. Okay, 2 things before we go. One, would you mind? I want to say I got just one more thing that I want to read.
Okay.
But would you end us? And I can totally do it. But reading a part of your own book.
Yeah.
At page 270. I just think it might be a good. This might be a good landing page. So as you get set, I just want to read this to you. Are you all good? Everybody good? Okay, good. Kevin's good. Because I was just thinking about all that you've heard. You're like, yeah, what do we do with? Because sometimes love can feel very ethereal. Like love, like it's kind of like so what do we do? And part of the reason maybe it feels like that, I will say that feeling shifted for me. I see it more now as like revolutionary love, because when you kind of taste it and you experience a little bit of it, it does shift for you. Because I used to kind of see love that way, like kumbaya, and then I was like, oh God, no, this is a different kind of love. This is one that wrecks you in all the right ways, like and heals everything up. But it's like, what do you do with love? And there's so much that works out into. So it flows out into, I think, one of the things you champion in this book is what I call, or what some have called, deep listening or compassionate listening. So I just want to read you this, and then she's going to close us out with her reading. But here's one way forward for all of us. What people who are hurting want and need most is someone to bear witness to their pain. God, it's a line. Right or wrong, can you stand with me in solidarity and say, I see you, I hear you, I'm with you. Hurting people don't give, I love this phrase, a rat's behind about your defense or justification. God, isn't that true? Somebody who's hurting, that they don't care. Their momentary cry is, I'm in pain, this is hurting me, can't you see that? For one moment, I'm asking you to put aside your rationalism, your need to justify, your need to defend, and hear my heart. There's a sigh of relief in being heard, in being known. And then this is my favorite. Please, friends, before you post something, well, she's like, at this point I'm reading it going, she's talking to me. Please, friends, before you post something, take a moment and ask yourself. So, in just a moment, there's going to be books back here. I'm asking everybody in here to go buy a book for numerous reasons. One, she's home, so let's, for God's sake, support, all right? Second, her publisher needs to know there's actually people in the world who champion works like this. Third, you need to get it and go to page 64 and cut this out and put it on your computer before you get on Facebook, all right? And here are the questions to ask. There's a goal. You want to talk about championing love? Here they are. Before you hit send, just, am I posting this to defend my position? This is where I start not liking her. You know what I mean? Where it's like I'm just like, damn it. Am I hearing the heart cry of those in pain when I share this? Or will this post once again drown out their plea to be heard? God, that's it. Will it once again? But we're like, I'm going to take my stand. Once again, you're drowning out their desire to be heard. And then this, what the world needs is for us to move toward effective dialogue that's rooted in mutuality, love, and understanding. All right. And that's just one page. So, all right, Felicia, if you would, let's just close with this reading. It's so beautiful.
Unveiled or hidden, love is always there. In the hell of our deepest despair, in the high of our greatest joy, love is there. In the absence of correctly phrased theology and the presence of misinformation, love is there. In strokes of genius and brilliant creativity, love is there. In heartbreak and ecstatic union, love is there. I may say in and you say the, distinctions that rankle with the possibility of confusion. Still, love is there. I may bemoan the twists and turns of your journey, critique the way you're getting it wrong. Still, love is there. Do I trust love with you the way I trust love with me? Unveiled or hidden, do I believe love faithful enough to bring into alignment all that is misconstrued? Do I trust love to make whole that which is broken? Or do I remain hell-bent on helping it all?
Would you all just thank me and Felicia? Thank Felicia for just being here. I'm so grateful. And us. That's right. That's so on par for Cody. It's so on par. The actual narcissistic pastor said, would you thank me for... I love that. A couple things before we get out of here. One, Felicia's going to be right back there, and you brought books. All right, so if you don't have a copy, I would encourage you to pick up a copy. Also, just before we get out of here, what's helpful for you, because I know it matters when people write reviews. Is that right? So can they do it like on Amazon? Is there another place? Okay, all right. Goodreads. Okay, Amazon and Goodreads. I know this may not seem like a lot to you, but that matters in that world. So if you read it and you love it, if you didn't like it, don't write anything. We don't want to hear from you, all right? But if you read it and you love it, go write a review. That'd be fantastic. And then Felicia's going to be right over here. And you can sign a book, too, if you want it. That would be lovely. So, guys, I thank you. My God, thank you for being here. I wish we could go all day. I really do. I'm so grateful. So we'll pick it up, Books and Bonfire. But I'm just grateful you're here. All right. Vinings Lake, for all of you that came this morning, thank you for being here. Peace be with you.